So, would you introduce yourself? Tell us what your name is, where you're from, or where you're living now, and the name of your book.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Tunno. I am originally an Oregonian, but we were a Marine Corps family, so we lived in wherever there was a Marine Corps base, Florida and Hawaii and Southern California. But I was basically an Oregonian until about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Became a Californian and then moved to Arizona in my retirement years, which is just recently. Title of my book is Intrepid Spirit. And I guess we'll get into why it got that name sometime during the interview.
Well, let's do it right now. So why Intrepid Spirit?
The original name of the story, which came from a screenplay that I wrote many years ago, we could talk about that, was Constitution, the name of the ship that is featured in the story. When I wrote the novel version, the original name was Water, Wind, and Fire, which one of my editors said, that's a nice lyrical sounding title, but it doesn't really capture the content of the book. So I played around with words, and the ship is a character in the book, which we could talk about, of course, but in as much as it's a character, it's a mystical character. So you have this spirit component, and then you have the intrepid, meaning brave and fearless. And so the words kind of went together. And so it's clearly a working title, but if a publisher says we like it, then we go with it.
Then that's what it's going to be, right?
That's right.
I was so hooked at the beginning. I just said, okay, this one I don't need to read anymore. I'm putting it in what we call the good pile, and away we go. I'll just pick it up and read the whole thing when I get to the semifinal round. So you really know how to grab people, but you're kind of almost in two different genres here, or three. How do you describe, how do you explain how you came up with the idea?
Well, the idea, as I mentioned earlier, started with the screenplay, but the screenplay itself was born from two sources. When I was young, high school age, I read everything on the Age of Sail, particularly a War of 1812 era. And so that naturally led to USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, and the history of the ship. I've been on the ship. It's in Boston Harbor. Everybody knows that. So when 9/11 came along, it occurred to me the Barbary Coast Wars that the ship was built for never really ended. Here we are 200 years later,
right,
dealing with the same enemy we dealt with as a brand new nation 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And my favorite ship was built to do battle with these people. Wouldn't it be kind of cool, since it's still a commissioned U.S. warship, the oldest one and the only one of its type in the world, wouldn't it be cool to put those two storylines together? And that was how the screenplay was born.
And then you did the conversion into a novel.
Then I wrote the novel some number of years after the screenplay, many years after the screenplay. But you talk about the fact that there seems to be more than one genre. The prologue, which is what you're talking about, the way the book starts, gives the reader a context of what this life was like on this ship in 1805 when it was doing battle with the Barbary Coast pirates. I want the reader to make a connection between that and the modern story, particularly the end of the modern story, not to give it away, but lo and behold, here she is again doing the same darn thing.
From a reader's point of view, you brought up that use of humor. And when you use a little bit of humor, it makes the serious parts even more dramatic. But I have to say, people say, oh, I laughed out loud when I read that book, and they really didn't. No, I really did. I mean, the cigarette boat joke had me rolling. People got to, you're going to.
That was fun. That was,
It was hilarious and very real. And
it was a fun scene to write.
The character Buckley, probably one of the funniest guys in the book. And sometimes it's what he says that's hilarious. And other times it's what he doesn't say. And he's just like, yes, sir. And you start laughing because you know, yeah, I know what he's thinking by now. Was he based on anyone that you knew?
No, but there's a Sergeant Buckley in a lot of different films. He's this, who was that sergeant that did a TV series? He died recently. Can't remember his name. He was on television quite a bit. He was a drill sergeant kind of a guy. He was also fun,
yeah.
but he was totally military all the way.
Yeah.
Sergeant Buckley is a very stoic character. He's 100% Jareen.
Right.
But so his humor is as dry or drier even than my own. It's a drier version of my own dry humor. He uses it in a way to get attention to his from his charges, his Marines and his sailors that he's trying to train, and he uses a very dry humor to get their attention, and I think it's a little bit entertaining. I didn't mean for him to be a funny guy. I meant for him to have some humor through his natural character elements.
Right. And you understand, oh, he's really in love with being involved in this group.
That's a good observation, because both the main character, Captain Moses Redding, and Sergeant Buckley are fishes out of water in this particular environment. I don't think a book works if you don't want the main character to succeed. And I don't think a book or story works if you don't like the main character. You've got to like them. A flawed character that becomes his or her flaws, better yet. But if you don't like them, you don't care as a reader.
You did a great job training me how to use guns that were made, 250, 260, 270 years ago. Was that a conscious thing that you did? Like, I got to really make sure I explain this correctly without making people turn the page and get out of here.
Yes, it was important because these weapons, muskets, cutlasses, blunderbusses, and the ship's cannons, it's important to know how they work, for the reader to know how they work, because they play such an important part in the climactic scenes. So I wanted the reader to be able to picture the difficulty of using these weapons, how quickly, for example, you reload them, kind of effect they have. And so I did the research on how the cannons are fired. Now, there's quite a procedure. All the ropes and tackles and the movement of the gun and how do you aim it and whatnot all comes into play. It's all useful information for later on. Nothing that I write about early in the book is not needed later on.
This book takes place, really, except for that opening chapter, it takes place today. And there are other naval warships in the U.S. Navy. There's a lot of excitement built up in there. And so it's that blending of these things. How did you resist having the Constitution fighting against a full-blown modern warship?
Yeah, I wanted to make the action in this story believable. It's a little fantastic. How the heck could this crew, with their old weapons, hope to win a battle against a fighting force that has modern weapons? And so that was hard enough to pull off.
Yeah.
So I did it in a way that involved strategy and the actual effect of these old weapons, and the reader will just have to discover that for themselves.
Right.
But I couldn't pull off a real face-to-face battle between Constitution and a modern warship.
What question did I not ask that you wish I would have?
Oh, I I like the questions. I like the way you put it. Your reactions to the book led to some very nice questions. A little bit more about the humor and some other elements. I wanted the reader to enjoy the book on different levels. The action, yeah, sure. The plot, yeah. But also the romance and the humor and those other elements. I want it to be enjoyable on many levels, so that it's not just the guy who likes military books would enjoy it and no.
Right.
Okay. Some female readers like it also because it touches the heart, I think, the heartstrings in a few scenes, and they seem to enjoy that.
A hard thing is having a male write about females, and that the females just don't seem like men with pretty eyes. I'll put it that way. You know, like your female characters, they're female, and you know, that's kind of a hard thing to pull off. You obviously must know a whole bunch about women.
No, I was just going to warn you away from that. No, I don't. I had to use my imagination a bit.
I know. Well, maybe because I'm a guy, I'm like, yeah, that's good, because I don't know anything about women either. So.
Yeah.
You know, David.
Do any of us?
Yeah, no one does. David, it's been fantastic talking to you and Intrepid Spirit. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and we will stay in touch, and we'll be on the virtual award ceremony with about 18 days, I think. We're close.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, take it easy.